Welcome back to the Section 121 Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Stanley Black. Today we are in Doctrine and Covenants, Section 121, verse 34 and 35. Behold, there are many called, but few are chosen. And why are they not chosen? Because their hearts are set so much upon the things of this world, and aspire to the honors of men, that they do not learn this one lesson. And that lesson, of course, is what we covered in the last episode about how the rights of the priesthood are inseparably connected with the powers of heaven, and that the powers of heaven can only be controlled or handled on principles of righteousness. So this is interesting. Not understanding that the powers of heaven can only be controlled and handled on the principles of righteousness is the distinguishing feature between those who are called and those who are chosen. And I think with due understanding of God's objectives for this planet, it would be fair to say that he would want us to not just understand that principle, that righteousness is necessary to control the powers of heaven, but that we would, insofar as possible, work to obtain those principles of righteousness, to become in our lives, to learn those principles of righteousness. So, God, through his prophets, through the scriptures, is inviting us to learn these principles of righteousness. And yet, many, it says, do not learn them. Why? Because their hearts are set so much upon the things of this world and aspire to the honors of men. What does that mean? When I started working on this podcast, I had no idea that one of the most poignant lessons I have ever received about Section 121, and specifically this verse, would come after I had started creating the podcast episodes. However, in recent weeks, I have come to see a depth to this verse that I have never perceived before. Back in episode 10, I shared that for much of my life, I have not felt valid as a person. In mid-2022, I was laid off from a job that I loved. I had been working for a great company for 13 years, and I had just attained the position of manager slightly over a year beforehand. That had been my big goal. I really wanted that position of manager. As I shared in episode 10, I like to lead. And being a manager seemed like a great seal of approval on the idea that I could be a good leader, that it was good for me to be in charge. As I've reflected on the pain of this layoff, the timing hurt a lot. It was extraordinarily frustrating, particularly because during my entire time as a manager, I had been working hard on helping people, on helping the teams I was leading to gain confidence in themselves, to believe in themselves, to believe that it really was possible to operate effectively in this new IT environment, that they could make choices that would lead to greater success, that they could exert influence, that they could become in so many ways. I had just achieved the point in my mind where the people I was leading had the confidence I wanted them to have, and I was ready to start pushing them just a little bit harder to actually move towards achievement. In the study of team dynamics, there's this concept that as a team comes together, they have 4 phases: forming, storming, norming, and performing. I have seen that due to the fluctuations in business, it is very common for teams to not be allowed to stay in the performing phase very long. There's a whole lot of time spent forming new teams, having the teams go through their storming phase of working through their disagreements, and they start establishing some norms, and then it seems like very often, shortly after those norms are established, a reorg happens that disintegrates the team, or at least changes enough of the assumptions that we have to go back to the storming phase. So I was quite frustrated at the timing of the layoff because I had guided the teams through storming and norming. I thought we had gotten to a place where we had some pretty good standards set up again and we were ready to move into performing. And then I was taken away. So that satisfaction of getting to performing isn't there. In fact, as I worked on my resume to apply for other jobs, I was extraordinarily frustrated because although over the years I have had some good performance as an individual contributor, I felt that the layoff timing kept me from having a clear performing phase as a leader that would give me the data I needed to substantiate the idea that I truly was a good manager and someone else should hire me. In fact, with the reorgs and with the layoff that happened. Honestly, there's been a few days since then where I have questioned Section 121 itself, where I have looked and said, but this long-run game of leadership, is it even worth it? If you don't get the fast results that the industry expects by pushing people hard, by driving a sense of urgency, whether that urgency is real or whether you have to make it up, and by generally making people feel like crap if they don't do all the things that you want them to do right now, well, I wondered, does the market move too fast? That Section 121 leadership is not actually a feasible operating solution? Is it all doomed to fail? Does trying to lead in God's way mean that you absolutely will fail in the world? A lot of the pain that I dealt with as a result of this layoff had to do with the fact that for about that year of being a manager before the layoff, I finally, for the first time, felt valid as a person. I had my validation of being a manager, and I had enough money that really, for the first time, I felt my family legitimately had choices. We could choose what we were going to do. We could plan an activity to go do as a family, an activity that even would cost a chunk of money, and have no feeling whatsoever that I was being foolish, not providing for the future, not being a good steward, but that actually using money to have fun as a family, to create treasured moments and experiences, was finally okay. And sure, I still dealt with health problems, but I had enough paid time off saved up that I could take a break for physical health or even for mental health and feel that fundamentally things were going to be okay. There's another scripture that my life experience has often caused me to question, particularly ever since becoming an adult and trying to be a provider for my family. That is in Mosiah chapter 4, verse 27, where it says, "And see that all these things are done in wisdom and order, for it is not requisite that a man should run faster than he has strength. And again, it is expedient that he should be diligent, that thereby he might win the prize. Therefore all things must be done in order." The part that I questioned was the part that said it's not requisite that a man should run faster than he has strength. Because for me, particularly ever since trying to be a provider, it has always felt that I had to run faster than I had strength. That I had to push absolutely constantly. And the least mistake, the least error, the least misstep would put my family further behind. So I struggled to believe that scripture. Well, during that year of being a manager, again, because of obtaining the position I wanted and because of having enough cash that it felt like my family had flexibility to choose what we would do, for the first time, it felt like I didn't have to run faster than I had strength. It was awesome. It was so cool to do projects and to feel that I could calmly do the project, enjoy the output of the project, and have a good time. It was really nice. And more than anything, the layoff took from me that sense of validity as a person. It took from me that sense that for once I could actually be on top of things and make things work. Because of my allergies and because of a series of other circumstances in my life, in addition to all the other challenges I described in episode 10, I have had a feeling of lack of agency. I have had a feeling of lack of being able to truly make choices. Why? Because my allergies meant that if I ate something I wasn't supposed to, I would receive repercussions for it. In various conference talks, priesthood leaders have talked about how we're not punished immediately or rewarded immediately, because if we were, then living the gospel would be obvious because it would be the only non-painful option. Well, for me, when they described that punished immediately, that felt very normal for me. That's how I felt most of my life. That if I slipped up at all, if I messed up at all, if I took one step to the right or the left, that I would be solidly punished for it. That was the other piece of feeling valid as a person that I really appreciated from that time, is that I felt that we had enough finances that I could handle some missteps, that I could finally start learning by my experience without it being so incredibly painful. So why am I telling you all this? Well, in Doctrine and Covenants, section 59, verse 21, it says, "And in nothing doth man offend God, or against none is his wrath kindled, save those who confess not his hand in all things, and obey not his commandments." This has been another verse that has been hard for me to accept and understand, because it certainly felt like wrath was kindled against me if I took the slightest mistake or didn't choose the optimal things. As I've been going through the process of healing since the layoff, I have come to see that my perception that I was being punished for everything was not correct. That in reality, adversity is real. Adversity happens to people, and bad things happening to you is rarely a direct demonstration of lack of God's favor towards you. Through the experiences I've been going through and overcoming some triggers and some false impressions from my past, I have come to see that sometimes something bad just happens, and it doesn't necessarily mean that we are out of favor with God. And furthermore, as we build our relationship with God, we can come to a place where we get past the fear of asking Him what He feels about us. It's been very important as part of my healing to come to understand that something going poorly is not evidence of God's anger. So are you striving to obey His commandments? And are you willing to confess His hand in all things? And that's where this jumps back into section 121. Because coming to see that I wasn't being constantly punished helped me come to the next realization. Through this pain, I have come to see that my perception of being valid as a person has been very natural man-based. It has been the feeling of independent strength and ability to prevent bad things from happening to me and my family. It has been seeking to have the power to block some consequences occasionally. So looking again at verse 35, hearts being set on the things of the world and aspiring to the honors of men. So getting to the point of trusting that I wasn't being punished, and getting to a place where I can find truth and solace in the idea that as long as I am trying to keep God's commandments and I am confessing His hand in all things, that God is not angry with me, was the foundation for learning the next principle that I'll explain in the continuation of verse 35 in the next episode.